Welcome to my channel. Support our channel by subscribing. Your subscription helps us grow and create more intriguing content like this. Now let's dive into today's story. Jake Thompson's world shattered the day he uncovered the truth about his wife Emma's betrayal. What started as a seemingly perfect marriage turned into a living nightmare. Jake had always considered himself fortunate. He had a thriving career as a software engineer in Sydney, a beautiful home, and what he thought was a loving relationship with his wife of 7 years, Emma. But everything changed the day he stumbled upon evidence of her infidelity. The discovery was not just heartbreaking, but infuriating. However, rather than confront Emma immediately, Jake made a cold, calculated decision to bide his time. He realized that if he played his cards right, he could turn her deceit into her downfall. For months, he let Emma think she was safe, allowed her to believe that her secrets were well hidden. But all the while, he was meticulously planning his revenge. I let her think she was safe. I let her believe that I was clueless. But I was always one step ahead. This is not just a story about betrayal, but about a masterful plan for payback. Jake's tale will take you on a journey through heartache, deception, and a revelation that would leave Emma regretting her choices forever. Before we dive in, remember to subscribe to our channel for more gripping stories of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Jake Thompson. The protagonist is a 35-year-old software engineer based in Sydney. He's always been a calm and analytical person, known for his rational thinking and measured responses. However, beneath his composed exterior lies a deeply passionate man who, once hurt, can become cold and calculating. Jake has always believed in the sanctity of marriage and has been nothing but loyal to Emma. He thought they had built a strong foundation together, only to have that belief shattered when he discovered her affair. Emma Thompson. His wife is 32 years old, a charming marketing executive who thrives in social settings. She's always been the life of the party, and her outgoing personality is what initially attracted Jake to her. However, Emma's desire for excitement and novelty slowly led her down a dangerous path. Feeling neglected in her marriage due to Jake's long work hours, she sought thrills elsewhere, eventually beginning an affair with her co-worker, Liam. Liam Parker is Emma's colleague, a charismatic 30-year-old with a reputation for being a smooth talker. He's the kind of guy who enjoys living in the moment with little regard for the consequences. He finds Emma's attention thrilling, seeing their affair as just another game. Sophie Williams is Jake's best friend since high school. A no-nonsense, fiercely loyal person, Sophie is the one Jake confides in when he discovers Emma's betrayal. She becomes his rock and helps him navigate through the emotional turmoil. Her advice is instrumental in Jake's decision to meticulously plan his revenge. Ben Thompson. Jake's older brother is the voice of reason in his life. Unlike Sophie, who supports Jake's plan for revenge, Ben encourages Jake to focus on moving on. However, Jake is too hurt and betrayed to let go without making Emma pay. Jake and Emma's love story began during their university years. They met at a mutual friends party in Melbourne, where sparks flew instantly. Jake, who was usually reserved, found himself drawn to Emma's vivacious personality. They started dating and eventually got married after 4 years of a blissful relationship. Their early years of marriage were filled with adventure, road trips, romantic getaways, and shared dreams of a future together. They moved to Sydney, bought a charming house, and built a life that many envied. However, as Jake's career as a software engineer took off, so did the demands on his time. Late nights at the office became more frequent, and their weekends together dwindled. Emma, on the other hand, was climbing the corporate ladder in her marketing firm. Though she thrived in her work, she began feeling increasingly neglected at home. Jake was often too exhausted to notice her attempts to rekindle their romance. Emma's dissatisfaction grew, and soon she found herself drawn to the attention of her charming colleague, Liam. What began as friendly banter turned into flirtatious texts, and before long, they crossed the line. Emma convinced herself that Jake would never find out. But unbeknownst to her, Jake's instincts were sharper than she anticipated. He noticed the changes, her secretive phone calls, her sudden interest in working late, and her newfound energy whenever she came home after a business trip. Yet, despite his suspicions, Jake chose to ignore the signs until he had undeniable proof. Jake's suspicions were first aroused when Emma started coming home later than usual. She claimed it was due to increased workload, but something didn't sit right with Jake. It wasn't just the late nights, it was the way Emma had become more secretive with her phone, often texting late into the night with a smile on her face. When he casually asked her who she was texting, she would brush it off, claiming it was work-related. However, the tension in her voice and her reluctance to share details only heightened his suspicions. Emma had also started dressing differently, buying new outfits and lingerie that she never seemed to wear around him. At first, Jake tried to convince himself that he was being paranoid. He chalked it up to Emma trying to de-stress from her demanding job. But as the lies became more frequent, Jake couldn't ignore the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One evening, Jake came home early from work, hoping to surprise Emma with dinner. But instead of being pleased, Emma seemed caught off guard. She quickly hid her phone when he walked in, her eyes darting nervously. That's when Jake knew he needed to find out the truth. Determined to uncover what was going on, he started paying closer attention, making mental notes of her behavior. He noticed the way she'd abruptly end phone calls whenever he entered the room, or how she'd step outside to take certain calls. The final straw came when Emma suddenly announced she had to attend a weekend work conference in Brisbane. Jake knew she was lying. Instead of confronting her, he decided it was time to gather evidence. The moment that changed everything came one Saturday morning. Emma had left her phone unattended in the kitchen while she was taking a shower. Jake noticed it buzzing with a message notification. His heart raced as he hesitated, battling with his conscience. But his curiosity got the best of him, and he quickly unlocked the phone. What he found left him reeling. There were dozens of intimate messages between Emma and Liam, with details that left no room for doubt about their relationship. The texts ranged from casual flirting to explicit exchanges about their encounters. The most damning evidence was a string of photos, selfies Emma had taken while in a hotel room, wearing lingerie Jake had never seen before. At that moment, Jake's world collapsed. However, rather than confronting Emma immediately, he chose a different path. As much as he wanted to rage, cry, or demand answers, he decided to keep his discovery to himself. Jake's logical, analytical mind kicked in, and he made a cold, calculated decision. He would let Emma think she was safe. He would continue to act as the loving, oblivious husband, all the while planning a revenge so meticulously crafted that she would never see it coming. Upon discovering Emma's affair, Jake was initially overwhelmed with heartbreak and anger. The woman he had loved and trusted had betrayed him in the most intimate way. At first, he considered confronting her immediately, demanding an explanation, making her confess or even packing her bags and throwing her out of the house. But as his emotions began to settle, Jake realized that confronting Emma in a fit of rage would only give her the upper hand. Instead, he decided on a different course of action, one that required patience and meticulous planning. Jake made the difficult choice to keep quiet, to pretend as though everything was normal. It was a painful decision that required him to bottle up his emotions and act as if he was still the loving, oblivious husband Emma believed him to be. The days that followed were some of the hardest Jake had ever endured. He had to smile through dinners, listen to Emma talk about her day, and even make love to her, all while knowing that she was sharing herself with another man. Every time she left the house, claiming she was working late or meeting friends, Jake's heart would twist with pain, but he kept his composure, playing the role of the doting husband perfectly. The facade was exhausting, but Jake knew it would be worth it. He was determined to gather more evidence, to build an airtight case that would leave Emma with no way to deny her betrayal. It wasn't just about exposing her infidelity. It was about making her feel the same humiliation and betrayal that she had inflicted on him. He was going to make her pay, but not just with words. He was going to tear down the life she thought she was so comfortable in. With Jake's decision to keep his knowledge hidden, Emma continued her affair, completely unaware that her every move was being monitored. In her mind, she was playing both sides perfectly. She thought she was being clever, managing her affair with Liam while keeping Jake in the dark. She became more brazen, texting Liam in front of Jake under the guise of work messages, and even sneaking off to meet him during her so-called business trips. Each time she came home with excuses about late meetings or out-of-town conferences, Jake would simply smile and tell her he understood, which only emboldened her further. Unbeknownst to Emma, Jake was gathering evidence every step of the way. He installed a small tracking device in her car and set up spyware on her phone to read her messages in real time. The more evidence he collected, the more his resolve hardened. But at the same time, it was like pouring salt on an open wound. Every message he read between Emma and Liam felt like a fresh betrayal. They joked about him behind his back, referring to Jake as boring and predictable. The cruel irony was that while Emma thought she was being clever, Jake was always one step ahead. He had access to all their intimate conversations, knew exactly where they met, and even discovered the dates of their secret rendezvous. But rather than confront her, Jake continued to let her dig herself deeper into the web of lies. Each day that passed, he added more to the folder of evidence that he was building, patiently waiting for the perfect moment to reveal everything. As Jake's collection of evidence grew, so did his plan for revenge. He wanted to make sure that when he finally exposed Emma, there would be no escape, no room for her to deny or spin the truth. He decided that their upcoming wedding anniversary would be the perfect setting for his grand reveal. Jake's mind went into overdrive, meticulously planning every detail of the night. He wanted the moment to be so shocking, so undeniable, that Emma would have no choice but to face the full consequences of her actions in front of all their friends and family. To pull it off, Jake reached out to a private investigator to gather additional evidence, including photos of Emma and Liam during their secret meetups. He also had the investigator record conversations between the two, capturing Emma confessing her love to Liam. Jake knew that exposing Emma privately wouldn't be enough. He wanted her to feel the same humiliation and betrayal she had put him through, and the best way to do that was to reveal her deceit in front of everyone she cared about. The weeks leading up to the anniversary were filled with careful preparation. Jake continued to play the loving husband, showering Emma with affection, planning a romantic getaway, and even inviting all their friends and family to a surprise anniversary party. Emma was delighted, thinking that Jake was finally putting in the effort she had been longing for. Little did she know, Jake was merely setting the stage for her downfall. By the time the party was planned, Jake had everything he needed: photos, texts, recordings, and even witnesses who had seen Emma and Liam together. It was going to be a night Emma would never forget. On the night of their anniversary, the atmosphere was filled with excitement and anticipation. Friends and family gathered at a luxurious beachside venue, marveling at the decorations and the effort Jake had put into planning the event. Emma was beaming with pride, feeling on top of the world as she believed that Jake had truly fallen back in love with her. She wore a stunning dress and basked in the compliments from the guests, completely unaware that her perfect evening was about to come crashing down. As the evening progressed, Jake played his role flawlessly. He mingled with the guests, complimented Emma, and even shared romantic moments with her to keep up the illusion. The guests were delighted to see the couple so happy, especially after what they thought had been a rough patch in their marriage. Emma couldn't stop smiling, believing that all her efforts to reignite their relationship had finally paid off. But beneath Jake's calm demeanor was a storm of emotions. The rage, betrayal, and heartbreak he had kept bottled up for months were about to be unleashed. At the peak of the evening, when everyone had settled down with drinks in hand, Jake stepped forward to give a toast. Emma looked at him with adoration, expecting a heartfelt speech about their love. But as Jake began to speak, the tone quickly shifted. He started by thanking everyone for being a part of their special night. "But," he continued, "I've been keeping a little secret of my own, and tonight I think it's time to share it with everyone." The room grew quiet, and Emma's smile began to falter. Jake's calm voice sent a chill down her spine as he pulled out a folder filled with damning evidence, ready to shatter the illusion she had so carefully crafted. With everyone's eyes on him, Jake began his revelation. He started slowly, describing how much he loved Emma and how he had always believed in the sanctity of their marriage. But then his tone changed, becoming colder and more calculated. "I trusted you, Emma, more than anyone else in my life. But trust, as they say, is a fragile thing," Jake said as he opened the folder in his hands. He began projecting the screenshots of Emma's intimate texts with Liam onto a screen behind him. Gasps erupted from the guests as they realized what was happening. Emma's face as the evidence piled up. Photos of her sneaking around with Liam, recordings of their conversations, and even screenshots of their explicit messages. There was no denying it now. Tears streamed down Emma's face as she tried to plead with Jake, but he was far from done. "I let you think you were safe, Emma. I let you believe that I was clueless. But in reality, I've known everything for months," he said coldly. The room was filled with a stunned silence, broken only by Emma's sobs and the whispers of shocked guests. Even Liam, who was present at the party, tried to sneak out, but Jake's brother Ben blocked his path, ensuring he couldn't escape the humiliation either. Emma's friends turned away, unable to meet her eyes, and even her own family looked at her with a mix of disappointment and disbelief. For Jake, it was a bittersweet moment. He had successfully executed his plan, but the emotional toll was heavier than he had imagined. As he watched Emma crumble, he felt a mix of vindication and sadness. The life he had once cherished was now in ruins, and while he had gotten his revenge, he realized it came at a great cost. The room was filled with gasps, murmurs, and the flash of cameras as Jake laid out the full extent of Emma's betrayal. Guests, who had been happily celebrating a seemingly perfect couple just moments ago, now stared in shock at the screen displaying Emma's intimate conversations with Liam. For Emma, it felt as if the ground had fallen away beneath her feet. She was caught like a deer in the headlights, her mind racing to process what was happening. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she tried to speak, but no words came out. The whispers among the guests grew louder. Friends, family, and co-workers were all witnessing her very public downfall. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, Emma turned to Jake, pleading through her sobs. "Jake, please, let's talk about this in private. I'm sorry, I really am," she stammered, reaching out to him with trembling hands. But Jake was unmoved. He coldly stepped back, avoiding her touch. "Private? Oh, now you want to keep things private? After everything you did behind my back, you think you can save face now?" he said, his voice filled with a controlled fury that sent chills through the crowd. Liam, who had been standing in the corner, tried to discreetly slip away, but Jake had anticipated this move. "And don't think you're getting away, Liam," Jake said, his voice booming. "I think everyone should know who you are, my wife's partner in betrayal." All eyes turned to Liam, who was now the focus of everyone's disdain. Friends who had once greeted him warmly now glared at him with disgust. The once charismatic man was now reduced to a fumbling mess, caught in the web of deceit he had helped spin. The party atmosphere had completely disintegrated into chaos. Emma's friends turned away, not wanting to be associated with her anymore. Even her own parents, who had attended the celebration with joy, now looked at her with disappointment etched on their faces. Emma broke down, collapsing to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. But Jake didn't offer her any comfort. For him, this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment where all the months of suffering and betrayal were laid bare for everyone to see. Once the bombshell revelation was over, guests awkwardly filtered out of the venue, leaving Emma alone in her misery. Jake stayed behind, coldly watching her as she tried to regain her composure. Finally, when the room was empty except for the two of them, Emma stood up, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She tried to approach Jake, her voice shaking. "Jake, please. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I made a mistake," she pleaded. But Jake was no longer the loving husband who had once worshipped the ground she walked on. He looked at her with a detached expression, the warmth in his eyes completely gone. "A mistake, Emma. A mistake is forgetting our anniversary or burning dinner. What you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. A choice you made over and over again," he said, his voice icy. Emma sobbed harder, trying to grab his hands, but Jake pulled away. "I gave you everything, Emma. I trusted you, and you threw it all away for a cheap thrill," he continued, his words like daggers. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the divorce papers he had prepared weeks ago. "It's over, Emma. There's nothing left to discuss," he said, shoving the papers into her hands. Emma's hands trembled as she looked down at the documents, realizing that the life she had taken for granted was now slipping through her fingers. In a last-ditch effort, she tried to convince Jake to reconsider. "Please, Jake, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything," she begged. But Jake's mind was made up. "You only want to fix things now because you got caught," he said, shaking his head. "I've been suffering in silence for months while you were out there having your fun. Now it's my turn to move on." With that, he turned his back on her and walked out of the venue, leaving Emma behind to face the wreckage of the life she had destroyed. For Emma, the realization of her actions came crashing down on her like a tidal wave once she was truly alone. The reality of her betrayal, the public humiliation, and the loss of her marriage hit her all at once. She sat in the empty venue, surrounded by the remnants of the party that was supposed to celebrate their love, now reduced to a scene of heartbreak and regret. She clutched the divorce papers to her chest, her mind replaying every mistake she had made. She couldn't believe how far she had fallen, how she had traded the stable, loving relationship she had with Jake for a fleeting affair that now seemed meaningless. Desperate and alone, Emma called Liam, hoping for some comfort. But the call went unanswered. Liam, it seemed, had no interest in dealing with the fallout of their affair. He had only been interested in the thrill, not the consequences. Realizing she was truly on her own, Emma broke down completely. She thought back to all the moments she had taken for granted, the mornings Jake would bring her coffee in bed, the vacations they had taken together, the future they had once planned. Now, all of it was gone. She had destroyed the one person who had always been there for her. In the days that followed, Emma tried reaching out to Jake multiple times, leaving voicemails and sending long, apologetic texts, but he never responded. The guilt consumed her, making it hard to sleep or eat. Her friends, once a solid support system, had distanced themselves, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. Even her colleagues at work began treating her differently as the story of her affair spread. Emma realized too late that her pursuit of excitement had cost her everything: her husband, her friends, and the respect of those around her. For Jake, walking away from the life he had built with Emma was not easy, but it was necessary. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, sadness, relief, and even moments of doubt. But with the support of his family and friends, especially Sophie, he began to find his footing again. Sophie, who had been there for him through the darkest moments, encouraged him to focus on himself and start living life for his own happiness. Jake took her advice to heart, diving back into his hobbies, hitting the gym, and even going on a few dates. At first, the idea of starting over felt daunting, but slowly Jake began to rediscover the parts of himself that had been lost during his tumultuous marriage. He found joy in the little things, early morning runs along Sydney's coastline, catching up with old friends, and exploring new passions. One day, while hiking with Sophie, she asked him if he regretted how he had handled the situation with Emma. Jake paused, thinking it over. "No," he finally said. "She needed to see the consequences of her actions. I needed closure, and I got it." As time went on, Jake realized that while revenge had given him temporary satisfaction, it was moving on that truly set him free. He started a new chapter in his life, unburdened by the pain of betrayal. Slowly, he opened himself up to the idea of love again, but this time, he promised himself to never settle for less than he deserved. The story concludes with Jake reflecting on everything he had been through. He had loved, he had lost, and he had grown from the experience. Sometimes people will betray you in ways you never imagined, Jake says in the closing scene, sitting on his balcony overlooking the city skyline. But it's not the betrayal that defines you, it's how you choose to respond. Jake had learned the hard way that holding on to anger would only poison him. By letting go, he had not only freed himself from Emma's betrayal, but also found a new sense of peace. "Thank you for watching," the narrator says. What would you have done in Jake's shoes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of love, betrayal, and redemption.